Okay. Meeting of the Transit and Bus Committees called to order. Are there any public speakers? No public speakers. There are no public speakers. Then a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the last committee meeting in March. Second. Comments or questions? All in favor? I think I hear aye. The minutes are approved. Mr. Chubak, are there any changes to the work plan?
No, there aren't. Thank you.
There being no changes to the work plan, I'm glad to ask President Carmen Bianco to make his opening statement and reports.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start this morning by just acknowledging, and I think you're going to hear this as Joe goes into his discussions on the operation report, that last month we delivered a report to you, a game plan, if you will, of how we are looking at service delivery, particularly on the 6, the 7, and the F lines. And I just want to say from my perspective that initiative is going along at a fairly good clip. They're making progress. I'm very happy with the progress they're making. And Joe's going to talk to you about the fact that we want to keep this at this committee level. We want to continue to make sure the committee's informed from time to time, so we'll continue to do that. But and Joe will fill in the details. The only other comment that I have this morning is that I have an announcement that our General Counsel, Lou Finkelman, is going to be leaving us. Lou's been here as General Counsel for 2 years. He has extensive experience in that role with the city and other agencies, at corrections, also at DCAS, and he's someone that we will certainly miss. So he found a position a little closer to home, and he's going to take advantage of what that will allow him to do with his family. And so, Lou, we wish you well.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Appreciate it.
With that, can we turn to Joe?
Good morning. As you recall, at last month's meeting, I presented an action plan that outlined the steps we were taking to improve evenness of service on specific lines that had shown significant decline in respect to weight assessment. I'm happy to report my staff is making good progress with respect to the action plan I laid out last month, although we understand that these initiatives will take some time before we see significant impact to our monthly figures. To date, in regards to crowding and service management initiatives deployed, we have finalized the training needs required for platform controllers and are moving forward with the staffing efforts to deploy personnel at strategic locations along the number 6 line to facilitate decreased dwell time and improved evenness of service. And over the course of this year, we will continue to roll out additional personnel as they come on board and they complete their training. In regards to the installation of step-aside boxes scheduled for 51st Street, that initiative has begun. We started with the southbound platform, and we have a few locations already installed, and the rest of the material is expected to come in the first week of July, at which point we will complete the step-aside boxes at 51st Street and then continue that initiative at 59th Street. In terms of our initiative towards incident prevention, we have completed our intensive inspections on the lines, as Carmen mentioned, the 6, the 7, and the F, that have experienced higher rates of failure. And our maintenance away forces are in the process of making corrective and preventative repairs to these zones. As for subway performance documented in today's committee book, we continued our steady performance for system-wide weight assessment in April of 2015. I am also pleased to report that the MDBF in April of 2015 was 157,519 miles, some 5.7% higher than last April. The 12-month MDBF also increased in April of 2015 to 142,799 miles, some 2.6% higher than the preceding 12-month period. As you know, we are coming up up on a very busy schedule, or busy season right now as the heat comes on board, and we have completed our prep work to our fleet, and we look forward to a very strong performance this summer with our fleet in regarding to our HVAC. And that concludes my report for the month.
Thank you. Mr. Albert.
Joe, I know this is a snapshot in time, but it says weekend on-time terminal performance for the number 2 is 39%. So if it's that bad at the terminal, how bad is it along the way?
Weekend? Well, that's the one thing with on-time performance. You could have a train that's keeping up good time, or would be on time all the way up to, and in the last few stations be held out and then be declared late. So again, on-time performance is not really a good indicator. Weight assessment along the line is really what you're looking for.
At 39%, though, that's one of the lowest ever, isn't it?
Well, the number 2 line, you said weekend?
Yeah.
The number 2 line
of
is one of the
GOs
longest
probably,
lines, so it's with the general orders that are going on. You also have the general orders on the 5 line that are impacting that as well.
And I think that's a really important key, is the amount of work that's going on here over the weekends.
Wouldn't it be a good idea then on the charts to have an asterisk when there has been a line with GOs on the weekends to say that that's the reason for,
Well, I think one of the things that we've discussed at last month is that we do want to come back towards the fourth quarter of this year to the board with our metrics moving forward, and to see what KPIs that we should be looking at. And although on-time performance is a good indicator for us from a service perspective, in the sense that we should be keeping an eye on it and see where some of the issues are, weight assessment is really what we're driving, and we want to continue with that.
Mr. Merdler.
On the subject of weight assessment, if you look at page 19, those statistics are not great either. And my question is really as follows. Am I correct that one of the problems in dealing with weight assessment and moving more trains to deal with increased load is the problem of the signals and having to replace the signals? Is that a factor?
Sure it is. There's no one-dimensional answer for your question. There's a combination of, there's a number of issues that play into it. One is crowded platforms. One is door holding. One is limitations through the existing signal system. There's a number of issues that play into that.
And
not every one of them would play into every single line or every segment of a line. It could change.
And am I also correct that many of those factors, such as signals, are proposed to be dealt with in the new capital program?
That's correct. In the capital program, there's a huge piece of it that's around signal modernization and or the communication-based signaling.
Do you have a ballpark number on the signal portion alone?
In the 15 to 19 program, Fred, do you remember? Is it like 2 point...
Signals and communications combined is about $2.9 billion.
2.9 billion. So that $750 million offered by the City of New York ain't going to go very far, is it?
I don't know that that's a question that we could answer here. I
So
hear
let
your
me ask
comment,
you-
but...
Let me ask you a follow-up to that, if I may. In terms of the overall usage of the subways, am I correct that we do not use the subways do not run outside of the City of New York? That's correct. So it is the City of New York and its public and its riders that benefit from it, am I correct?
Yes. I didn't swear myself in, though, today to...
I understand that.
I would tell the truth, the
My
whole truth,
point-
nothing
my
but the
Objection,
truth.
point
leading
is-
question.
It's a time, my point is simply this, it's a time for reset. It's a time for people to understand that the City of New York has an obligation, that obligation is not being met, and that the state is not alone in that responsibility.
Commissioner, I'd answer it even a little bit differently, maybe. And This I will say, and that the entire capital program is critical to the vitality, the reliability of our system and the entire MTA system, whether it's the railroads, it doesn't matter. We need that support, that capital program, because that's the way that we're going to be able to deal with the keeping a 100-year-old system safe and reliable, upgrading it to meet the needs of our customers in the future. It's all in that package.
Commissioner Trottenberg.
Just a couple points here. One, just for the record, the city did include in its capital plan what the MTA requested as a contribution. But just one thing to remember, and certainly the city has a big obligation. The city has no independent revenue-raising authority, unlike the state. We cannot charge tolls, we cannot raise our taxes, so even if you want the city to do more, just remember that if anything we take out of our capital plan just eats into other city projects. We have no independent revenue-generating authority.
Correct.
We are a creature of the state.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You have a $3 billion surplus, all right?
A $3 billion surplus for New York
Is
City.
the colloquy
is not that
necessary? Members of the committee, you made your point. Can we move on? Mr. Capelli.
Yeah, I'd just like to take advantage of these waning moments to agreeing with at least part of the spirit of my esteemed board member on the capital program with his leading questions. Where I part from his and agree somewhat more with Commissioner Trottenberg is that it is the responsibility of the state as well, in large part, to provide the funding for the capital program. And I am distressed that during the closing minutes of the legislative session, there has not been a peep about the potential impact that failure to adopt a capital program will have on all kinds of things, including safety, overcrowding conditions, these very serious problems that we all have been raising for a long period of time. And I would hope that that Albany gets together with the local government, in this case the City of New York, and comes up with a plan to, in fact, fully fund the capital program, which in my estimation is already too small to meet the needs for a growing footprint in the City of New York, the state of New York, in the regions that we cover, and so I thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready now for the bus part of the operations report and President Darrell Irick?
Good morning. MDBF in the month of April was 5,037 miles, a 12.4% increase from March of this year and a 10.8% increase from April of last year. While this represents a significant achievement, we continue to work hard to mitigate the impacts of operating 1,100 buses that are 15 years of age or older. As we mentioned last month, we recently rolled out our MTA bus time application. The application provides a way for our customers to save their favorite stops, intersections, and routes on their smartphones. A major improvement currently being tested in the Bronx only is that the system now includes arrival time predictions, as it was requested by many of our customers. In the past, MTA bus time information told customers how far away their next buses were. Now, next bus information for the Bronx also predicts when their next bus will arrive. The application takes into consideration multiple factors that can affect arrival time of a bus, such as its current schedule, historical travel times over the same distance, current traffic conditions, and predictive modeling to accurately generate arrival time predictions. If conditions change, MTA bus time automatically updates the prediction. I am proud to add that the complex algorithm powering this system was developed entirely in-house. While the rollout of the mobile app is still very recent, preliminary feedback has been very positive.
Excuse me.
Sure.
So that real-time arrival information is only if you're using the app. It's not on the regular bus time.
I believe that is the case, right? It's only on the application, right? We anticipate rolling out the arrival time predictions in the rest of the system in the upcoming months, and that completes our report for bus operations.
Mr. Ballin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not on the agenda, and I don't know when to raise it, but there is an issue relating to operations of bus that I'd like to just ask a couple questions about, and I'll try and be very brief. We all received, I believe, and on the board, emails of letters from folks with respect to the right-of-way law, and I just wanted to, and I note that who knows what's going on in Albany, especially I don't know, but there seems to have been legislation submitted to amend the right-of-way law, the law that has to do with the arrest of bus drivers promptly upon an accident. I just think that the issue cries out for some equitable look, some fairness look, and I'm not quite sure, given what may be changing in the law in Albany, but I think it's important that you know, at least from my perspective, if I'm here next month, I would like a report back on the situation, because I think that there are a myriad of solutions with respect to the buses that we as a board need to address, and the notion that the driver is automatically arrested and then has his due process is one that I just think we need to revisit at the board level. Again, the shifting law, which may or may not pass, I know lots of bills are submitted, but may change it. But I want to do this in public, and I want to give you some time. But maybe if we could discuss it prior to the next board meeting, or maybe if it's appropriate at the board meeting. I think the alternative solutions that have been set forth by the union are some that we need to discuss. Now, I don't mean to interact inappropriately with respect to a union matter, but I do think some of the alternate solutions need to be discussed at the board level. So I don't know when the appropriate or how the appropriate way, Mr. Chairman, is to do this, but I think that the inequitable treatment of the bus drivers is something that does need to be addressed.
Let me.
I don't need to start a whole. I wanted to raise it, and I defer to you as to what to do.
And we may well wait for the board meeting when the chairman is present for more fulsome discussion. But Mr. Capelli, I think, had a question as well.
Yeah, I actually associate myself with those comments. John Samuelson and TWU have introduced a piece of legislation which I think is meritorious. I have raised this issue before, that I think the bus drivers have been treated inequitably in this situation, and that as their employer, we have a responsibility to, in fact, weigh in on the issue. As somebody who puts these men and women out on the street every day, there is pending legislation. I believe Danique Miller has a bill in the City Council. I'd like to know where the MTA as an institution stands on this issue, and look forward to a discussion on it.
It's probably fair to say there's a discussion to be had. It's probably fair to say that there's a discussion to be had with respect to facts on both sides of this issue, and have a full discussion and airing of those facts might be very good. But we're probably not in a position to do that right now. Is there any other individual wishes to be heard? Are we ready to go to safety and Cheryl Kennedy?
Okay, safety results were as follows. With the exception of fires, all items discussed refer to rates. Subway customer accidents and injuries increased when comparing March 2015 with March 2014, mostly due to weather-related slip, trip, and fall incidents. Subway customer accidents and injuries were relatively flat on a 12-month basis. Subway fires were mostly flat when comparing April 2015 with April 2014, and slightly increased on a 12-month basis. Bus collisions showed a slight increase on a 1-month basis when comparing April 2015 with April 2014, while bus collision injuries decreased more notably over the same period. Both bus collisions and injuries decreased on a 12-month basis. bus customer accidents and injuries decreased on a monthly basis and had a slight increase on a 12-month basis. Employee lost time accidents were flat on a 12-month basis, but increased when comparing April 2015 with April 2014. The increase was primarily due to slip, trip, and fall incidents. Thank you.
Conclude the safety report?
Yes.
Are there any questions or comments on it? Then we're ready to turn to the crime report and Chief Joe Fox.
Good morning, all. Carmen, I wish you my very best, and loved working with you, and our friendship will continue.
You're not getting rid of me that quickly, Chief. I'm going to be around, and I'll be around for the July meeting, too.
It's okay.
But thank you.
Is this working? Am I? Okay, thank you. Good morning, all. For the first 5 months of 2015, total major felony crime was up 1.1% within our transit system, with 10 more incidents than during the same period in 2014, 915 versus 905. There was an increase of 26.9% in assaults, which is 99 versus 78, 21 more assaults system-wide, citywide. And there were 9 more robberies this year during the first 5 months of 2014, a 4.8% increase, 196 versus 197, and I'm going to speak a little more about robberies in a couple of minutes. For the month of May, major felony crime within our transit system was up 27.8%, 216 versus 169, a difference of 47 incidents. This increase was led largely by an increase in the number of robberies during May, with 30 additional incidents, 61 versus 31. Of the 216 major felonies in May, 38.4% were committed in Manhattan, 16.2% in Queens, 30% in Brooklyn, and 15% in the Bronx. Year to date, we averaged 6.1 major felonies per day. The average was 6.0 per day during the same period in 2014. And it's consistent with the 6.1 crimes per day we've averaged throughout 2014, our year-end average. Over the past several weeks, we have deployed additional officers, as well as extended some officers' shifts to curb any trends as we identify them. We've also redeployed, thank you. Those are a little low, thank you. We've also redeployed officers from our impact teams and other specialized units to areas where we've experienced increases in crimes. Our teams carefully monitor crime occurrence locations so we can focus efforts accordingly, such as onboard trains, platform, etc. A historical look at our crime within our subway provides some perspective. As you know, subway ridership continues to increase steadily, and of course that's a great thing. In March, weekday volume averaged nearly 5.7 million, with 88,000 more riders each day than the same time last year. There are nearly 1 million more passengers than in 2005, and nearly 2 million more than in 1995. 20 years ago, we had 16.9 major felonies a day. This year, with 2 million more daily passengers, we're averaging 6.1 crimes per day. You'll recall that last year there was a substantial reduction in robberies. At the end of 2014, they were down to historic lows, 28%, with 173 fewer robberies that year. The average number of weekly robberies last year was 8.4. This year, it's 9.1. Year to date, we experienced substantially less than the 11.8 robberies, average weekly robberies reported as recently as 2013. Last month, I mentioned that our officers arrested 2 persistent offenders for a series of thefts from sleeping passengers, and that we were investigating several stolen cell phones and other property that was recovered as a result of these arrests. Mark Gilmore, who has 23 prior arrests, is currently in on $7,500 bail and awaiting his next court date, which is July 6th. He was charged with 5 counts of grand larceny after his apprehension, and we're working closely with the prosecutors in this case. After investigating property recovered while executing a search warrant, the second individual, Kevin Morales, was ultimately charged in 9 separate incidents. Our team in Brooklyn met personally with the Kings County District Attorney's Office at the executive level, and we discussed an appropriate prosecution plan. We will continue to follow through with this case, as well as with Mark Gilmore. As I mentioned to a couple of media outlets recently. Our system continues to be the safest, one of the safest transit systems in the world, and we're absolutely committed to keeping it that way. In fact, as a result of some of our adjustments in deployment in the last few weeks, week 20, we're in week 26 now, week 24 and 25, we averaged 5.6 crimes a day in our last 2 weeks. I want to thank everyone, Officer Filippo Gugliera, the officer who was stabbed when he intervened to protect a 78-year-old woman who was being assaulted. I want to thank everyone for their support, their emails, their encouragement, our board and our community and our city. Filippo's doing very well. He's got great spirits, and as is the 78-year-old victim who he was protecting. Thank you, Tom Prendergast, Freddie, Carmen, Joe, and any questions or suggestions?
Thank you, Chief. I think Mr. Capelli and then Mr. Merdler, and then Mr. Ballin.
First of all, my sympathy and applause to the officer who was injured in the line of duty.
Thank you, Alan.
On behalf of our riders, our hearts and prayers are with him and his family, and I know I express the thoughts of everyone here.
Thank you, Alan.
Secondly, I was very pleased to hear you say that you're meeting with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office as to a plan with respect to that person who was involved in the 9 incidents recently. I hope that this is the beginning, not on your part, okay, because quite frankly, you're not, the police department is not the problem here. In fact, in my view, the District Attorney's Office has been the problem, and MTA has been the problem in how we track and monitor these situations. Going back as far as Joe Loda, Commissioner Merdler and I have been pushing the MTA to, in fact, assign personnel to work with the District Attorney's Office to keep track of persistent offenders, okay? It is certainly worthy of a couple of people out of 66,000 that we currently employ to track the people who go down into the system and commit crimes persistently, and to, in fact, make it known to the district attorneys that this is a priority of ours and that we're going to be vigilant in exposing the lax prosecution that allows them to go back into a system to prey on our customers as a regular part of their business. Okay, and I would hope that we take this opportunity now with the chief taking the initiative with the Brooklyn District Attorney, assign somebody from central staff as the beginning of a starting point to create a program by which we are going to follow through on these prosecutions. We have the statistics, okay? CompStat and statistic gathering are used to become a law enforcement tool. What we need to do is take the information that we have. We know who the people are who are committing these crimes over and over again, and assist in the prosecution and make sure that we don't allow them to go back in. So please convey to the chairman that this is a perfect opportunity for this board to assist in the NYPD's efforts to continue to make our system safer. Thank you.
Alan, thank you. And when we're dealing with such low crime numbers, it's even more focused and intelligent policing and follow-up is very, very important. And we're doing a lot with the district attorneys because it is a small number of people who are committing these crimes.
Commissioner, if I can just add one comment, and I hear you loud and clear, and I think there's always a way to make that better, but there are so many situations where the relationship with ourselves and our colleagues at NYPD and the various district attorneys is right where you want it to be, exactly what you're talking about in terms of, I don't want to get into the details of what type of crime, but we spend an awful lot of time working with our colleagues at the NYPD and also the district attorney office doing exactly what you're saying.
Okay, and what we have requested, going back to Joe Loda, I and other members of this board, is that you report on that to us.
I've not heard that before, but we can look into that, certainly.
Going back to Joe Loda, that was the request. Thank you.
In fact, just to complete that cycle, we had a firm commitment from Joe Loda that would be put into place. Commissioner Capelli and I both insisted on that commitment at the time, that we would get a report, and that it would not just be the district attorneys, but the Office of Court Administration, because dancing through the courts for adjournment after adjournment doesn't help provide any basis for people to have any concern about the legal justice system. So I would associate myself completely with Mr. Capelli's argument, and I apologize for jumping in. May I?
Sure. Mr. Ballin.
I have a couple of questions for you. Chief, is your staffing this year, at this time, the same? Oh, did you recognize Al? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I went to Mr. Ballin.
Go.
Matt, is your staffing at this time the same as it was last year?
Yes, it is. It's I actually have the exact numbers, but we are right around where we were, and we do have a class coming out of the academy. But I can get back to you,
Okay.
Chuck, but it's
Secondly,
very close.
Am I correct that there is a citywide issue in terms of slight increases in crime, shootings and the like, in terms of the stats? Is that right?
We're actually, overall in the city, we have a reduction in index crimes. We've been dealing with shooting spikes that you've seen. The team is doing a lot in response to that. And we actually had a pretty good week in shootings as well. So it's all, the way we got here with the safety in our city, both Transit Bureau and throughout the city, is a keen focus, literally hour by hour, on what's happening where and being able to adjust our deployment. Like, I'm not sure if I mentioned in my statement, one of the things we did is shifted officers out of our impact teams and put them in Manhattan districts. We shifted hours, and we're able to do that quickly. And so it goes with the other precincts in the Housing Bureau in the city.
And do you require overtime to do that?
We absolutely employ overtime. We get supported by the chief of department, Chief O'Neill, and then we've been deploying a lot of overtime in the last couple of months.
So that overtime is an integral part, is it not, of trying to deal with crime as needed and as it arises and spikes?
Overtime is something that we use. Integral, everything we do is integral.
I have one more question. I don't know if you have the answer to it. And it rises by reason of the transit officer who went down in the street and helped rescue a woman and got stabbed for his heroism. How many line-of-duty injuries and fatalities has the police department and/or transit sustained in the course of the past year or so?
Well, it's a dangerous job, and the exact numbers and comparisons I can get you, but it's young men and women go into harm's way and they put themselves at risk, and we've suffered 5 line-of-duty deaths in the last 6 months. I was at a street renaming for Wenjin Liu 2 weeks ago, and this Saturday for Rafael Ramos.
And that's what I wanted to emphasize. It is a difficult job and a dangerous job.
I'm very proud of them, and they go into harm's way. Thank you.
Mr. Ballin.
Thank you. Chief, from my perspective, anything you need or want to ever discuss at the board level, door's always open. But I do have one question. It's tough to follow the statistics sometimes. But as you were saying, we have over 2 million riders a day more. Crime appears roughly stagnant in terms of the increase-decrease. I guess it's 1% up, and I don't want to belittle that. Some categories up, some down. But the statistic that jumps out at me is, given that the arrest number seems to have plummeted. And I was wondering if you could maybe explain, if I'm reading it wrong, or maybe explain why there would be 15 to 20% fewer arrests given the beginning of this sentence.
Yes, Mr. Ballin. It has not plummeted, arrest enforcement. It's something we watch very closely. And if you remember the beginning of the year, with a lot of distractions, the funerals and the demonstrations, the whole city, all bureaus had a reduction in arrest. So what you see is consistent with our reduction for those couple of months. Now, also with that, we are taking an even greater focus on quality over quantity. And officers, there are some crimes, there are some violations, I should say, that officers absolutely have discretion. And we want to make sure that they're using discretion when they think it's appropriate. And also another factor, for example, I mentioned, like, we typically average 60% of the crime in our system is on train, and 40% is off, combination of the platforms and the mezzanine. So as our crime, like back in April, we increased on-train crime to up to 70%. So we redeployed people to on-train deployment. Now, on the train, officers wind up seeing less violations than they do on the platforms and the mezzanine. And we want them on those trains to be present and visible. So that would reflect a decrease depending on our deployment for the week or month.
Well, maybe we should adjust the statistics too, but just to show you for May, not going back earlier in the year, you're down 18% for total arrests, 14% and
Right.
17% for the other two categories.
Right, and May we had a big shift in focus on train deployment. All of our plainclothes teams, our overtime was on train.
Okay, but other than the train, non-train, there have been no change in policy with respect to keeping law and order and the smoothly functioning subway system? Have there been any other change in policy with respect to making arrests and enforcing the law?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are we ready for the transit portion of the finance report? And back to President Carmen Bianco.
Thank you. Preliminary April 2015 New York City Transit fare box revenue was $365.6 million. That's $800,000 or 0.2% below budget. Year-to-date revenue was $1.4 billion. That's $26.6 million or 1.9% below budget, due mainly to multiple snowstorms and lower than normal temperatures, reducing ridership throughout the first quarter of the year. Preliminary April 2015 operating expenses exceeded budget by $14.4 million or 2.6%, including labor expense overruns of $11.7 million or 2.9%, and higher non-labor expenses of $2.7 million or 1.8%. Year-to-date operating expenses were above budget by $18.2 million or 0.8%, due primarily to higher overtime expenses resulting mainly from adverse weather and vacancy absentee coverage requirements. Moving on to preliminary ridership, April 2015, New York City Transit ridership totaled 206.3 million, 1.6% below budget. Year-to-date ridership was 3.6% below budget. April 2015 average weekday ridership results compared to April 2014 were as follows. Subway ridership was 5.7 million, an increase of 2%. New York City Transit local bus ridership was 2 million, a decrease of 2.8%. New York City Transit express bus ridership was 42,000, a decrease of 3.5%, and paratransit ridership was 29,000, a decrease of 1%. An early look at preliminary May 2015 financial results. Farebox revenue was 2.3 million, or 0.6% above budget. Weekday subway ridership averaged 5.9 million, the highest of any month in more than 45 years, with 4 days in the month exceeding the 6 million mark. Preliminary May 2015 operating expenses were below budget by 21.6 million or 4.1%, including labor underruns of 17.6 million or 4.5%, and lower non-labor expenses of 4 million or 2.8%. The favorable labor results are currently under review, and that concludes transit report.
Any questions or comments on this part of the finance report? Well, I have one. Carmen, these seem to be somewhat contradictory trends. At the beginning of your report, you had said that ridership year-to-date and total were below budget, and then we talked about pretty significant increases in ridership. Is it that we're budgeting too high, or is there any other issue with our forecasting?
No, I don't think there's any issue. I think ridership certainly follows some seasonal trends. And what we say here in the first quarter is we were off because of weather, certainly. But as we see the statistics coming in for May, in this case, they were strong at the 5.9 million and we're starting to see that 6 million mark coming back to us again and again. So I think what you're seeing is a little bit of seasonality in those numbers. Michael?
I think you got it exactly right. We're familiar with the various factors that need to be incorporated into the budget. Seasonality, there was a fair increase in March, which we factored in also. Obviously, the weather can't be predicted, so to the extent that it was worse early in the year, ridership suffered because of it. Now we seem to be much closer to budget.
Then for the bus section of the finance report, President Darrell Irick.
April 2015 fare box revenue for MTA bus was 17 million, 0.9, or 0.1%, 1 million, 0.3% greater than the budget. MTA bus non-reimbursable expenses were 51.8 million in April, or 0.8 million, or 800,000, or 1.5% below the budget. For ridership, April 2015 MTA bus ridership totaled 10.7 million, which is 0.5% below budget. However, on a 12-month rolling average, weekday bus ridership was 2.3% better than last year, and average weekend ridership was 1.7% better than the 12-month rolling average of last year. This concludes the MTA bus, finance, and ridership reports.
Thank you, President Irick. Are there any questions or comments? If there are none, we're ready to go to Capital Program Report and Fred Smith.
Okay, good morning. Looking at capital program results, commitments for April totaled $126 million, including the largest award, which is our next major Sandy repair work, which will be in the 53rd Street tubes affecting the E-train service. E-train service affecting the E. Work will commence on weekends in the fall. There'll be 4 weekends of work this year, and then the rest will continue into 2016. We also had a signal project to modify signal control lines system-wide, and an award for the installation of HealthPoint kiosks at 24 stations, which includes stations on the number 6 line in the Bronx on the Pelham line, Brooklyn stations on the J, and Queens stations on the M line. That's working towards our goal of having 250 stations completed by the end of this calendar year. Meanwhile, completions during the month of April totaled $58.5 million, including mainline track replacement on segments of the 8th Avenue line in Manhattan and the White Plains Road line in the Bronx. Station improvements, including stairs at 9th Street Station and on the 4th Avenue line, and ventilator repairs on the Crosstown line at Clinton, Washington. We also completed the installation of HealthPoint kiosks at 17 stations. Our total to date is 165 stations, and now have HealthPoints available. That's a total of over 1,000 HealthPoints that we've installed to date. That completes my report.
Thank you. If there's nothing further on the totality of the operations report, we're ready to go to procurements and Steve Plachaki.
Good morning. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit and MTA capital construction procurements, includes 14 actions totaling $173.8 million in expenditures. I would like to highlight 2 procurements included in this month's agenda. The first item is a modification to exercise a revised option with TransCare New York Incorporated to continue providing accessorized paratransit transportation service through October 2019. New York City Transit spends approximately $295 million per year in primary paratransit transportation service. In an effort to further reduce the cost of this service, New York City Transit developed a long-term strategy utilizing MTA audit services to conduct audits on the 14 primary carrier contracts to enable procurement to obtain immediate cost savings through the renegotiation of contract rates. This effort is also designed to obtain valuable insight into the cost structures and business models involved in running various size paratransit operations for the development of future solicitations. The initiative began with the audits of primary carriers Columbus Transit and PTM Management Corporation as these were the first primary carrier contracts to have reduced contract terms that resulted from prior cost savings initiatives. As presented to the January 2015 board, projected savings of approximately $22.7 million between Columbus and PTM contracts over a 5-year period were achieved through negotiations and exercising options at reduced pricing. The action being presented to the committee today will exercise a contractual option with TransCare for 5 years at reduced pricing. The information provided by the audit allowed procurement to successfully reduce TransCare's fully loaded vehicle service hour rate from $44.43 to $41.92 an hour, which represents a 5.6% reduction, resulting in a total estimated savings of $10.7 million over the 5-year option period. These savings apply retroactively from November 1st, 2014 through the option expiration date, October 31st, 2019. Procurement will continue to pursue additional cost savings through this initiative as audit results of the remaining 11 primary carriers become available. The second item I would like to highlight is a budget adjustment for $35 million to the indefinite quantity engineering service contract with the joint venture PB-PTG. This contract was one of several competitively awarded contracts in 2011 for federally funded design projects for security and other construction tasks. However, in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, we turned to various consultants who had been procured using federal processes to compete for Sandy work. The board has approved budget increases to various contracts in order to expedite the assessment, recovery, and designs needed to restore assets. PB-PTG was competitively selected for several of the larger initiatives such as Montague, Canarsie, and Clark Street tubes, as well as the South Ferry complex. For existing projects, only the original design engineer can make revisions to the drawings or perform other construction-related tasks. Accordingly, this budget adjustment is required to complete planned and ongoing Sandy work and to restore funding originally intended for security task orders. I ask for your approval of all actions in the agenda.
May I have a motion and second on the procurement package?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Merdler and then Mr. Albert.
Steve, I'd like to turn to Affinity Specialty Apparel. That contract was originally approved in 2010 as a 5-year competitively negotiated one, and apparently we're asked to extend it without any competition. Is there a reason why we couldn't put that out to compete?
The original contract was solicited with a 5-year base and a 3-year option. We optimally wanted to do an 8-year contract, but we felt it was wise to give the 5-year base and revisit their performance to determine whether or not they were performing well and actually doing well. We had an opportunity to determine whether we wanted to compete this earlier, but we said that A, the option pricing was favorable, B, the performance of the incumbent was satisfactory, and on top of that, there's a significant effort that goes into bringing on new contractors for this type of service. Our intention is to begin the resolicitation next year for the contract, and this is one of the contracts that will most likely be a consolidated procurement throughout all the agencies.
What efforts were made to determine whether the pricing is reasonable?
We performed a survey. The last time when this contract was originally solicited, we went back to the other contractor who was, I'll say, in second place. We asked them whether their pricing would have changed. They indicated that their pricing for their option would have remained the same, which, as I indicated in the last sentence of the blurb, is about $950,000 lower than the price that we're paying now.
But did we try to see if there would be other people who could enter the field other than that second-place person?
The answer is we went back to as I indicated, the party that was the only other remaining competitor in that particular field. This is a particularly daunting type of contract with the requirements, and quite frankly, it's an extremely difficult item to survey. You know, folks may raise their hand and say yes, but when they really get into the detail and the scope of work,
the survey becomes a little bit diluted with regard to its response. Our intention is to go out again and competitively solicit.
But you are
this.
going to go out so that we
Absolutely.
see if there are. All right.
Yes.
Then let me take you over to the TransCare. That was a 2008 contract, and we're now exercising an option there. And we're talking about serious money, hundreds of millions of dollars. My question is, have we made any efforts to solicit other bids in that area?
We intend to go out earlier than the expiration of the base contracts. As you may recall, these contracts, there was 16 awards. They were awarded with a 10-year base and a 10-year option. Our intention is not necessarily to exercise the option as is, but to go out competitively, resolicit, and then pulse the marketplace again.
So that, with respect to both of these, we could look forward to somewhere in the next couple of years getting a new solicitation. Is that right?
Yes, that's the intention.
Thank you.
Mr. Albert, then Mr. Ballard.
Steve, with respect to DynaServe for the Select Bus fare collection machines, is this a cleaning of the exterior of those machines only, nothing to do with the mechanism?
It's a cosmetic cleaning.
Just cosmetic?
Correct.
Thanks.
Air did not satisfy the financial qualification requirements.
Correct.
In what nature was that? And why should we not care?
We always care. The issue
But
ultimately...
you want us to approve it?
Yes, I do. The issue is we're advancing no money to this company. They've done satisfactory work for us for quite a number of years. They're a good performer. The pricing that we're getting, we consider it to be competitive. This reduction in price places them at the fourth lowest pricing from a vehicle service hour perspective, and we believe that their ability to remain a going concern is promising. Did I answer the question, or?
Part of it, that's okay. What was the nature of their financial qualification deficiency?
They had some challenges with regard to debt to equity ratios, net loss to net sales, and liquidity.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Are we ready for a vote on the entirety of the procurement package? All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Package passes. Now I'd like to ask Peter Caffiero for the service change report.
There we go. We have 3 items to present this month to the committee. The first is our regular periodic review of bus schedules. This month, we've evaluated 38 bus schedules, proposed changes on 37 routes that have been identified for implementation in the September pick this year. These changes, as always, are to better align service with customer demand and meet our bus loading guidelines. Implementation of these schedule changes is estimated to save $1 million annually that has been incorporated in the 2015 operating budget. Also this month, we wish to inform the board of our plans to permanently extend the route BX5 in the Bronx to Bay Plaza Shopping Mall on Saturdays and Sundays. The Bay Plaza Shopping Center is a major destination just south of Co-op City. The mall at Bay Plaza has significantly expanded last summer, and it's anticipated that created 1,800 new jobs. Currently, there are many bus routes that serve Bay Plaza, but there's no direct service to the mall from the southern Bronx. The extension of the BX5 would provide service to this area from the South Bronx on Saturdays and Sundays, which are the peak days for retailing. The service extension was announced as part of the 2014 Service Enhancements Package and is supported by a resolution of the Bronx Community Board 10 Municipal Services Committee in May of this year. The net operational cost of this change is $300,000. Finally, this month, we're informing the board of our plan to implement with the city Q44 Select Bus Service in Queens and in the Bronx. This will be New York City Transit's 11th Select Bus Service route. As previously discussed with the board, New York City Transit has been working closely with New York City Department of Transportation to implement bus rapid transit in New York City. Making buses faster and more reliable is a major goal, and one way to accomplish it is with select bus service. The Q44 and Q20A-B routes serve over 42,000 customers on an average weekday, making Main Street one of the busiest transit corridors in Queens. The Q44 connects two growing commercial hubs, Flushing and Jamaica, and provides a vital interborough link, transit link between Queens and the Bronx. The Q44 Limited provides daily service between Archer Avenue, Merrick Boulevard in Jamaica, and Boston Road, East 180th Street at the Bronx Zoo, and it travels via Main Street, Parsons Boulevard, and the Cross Bronx Expressway Service Road, making local stops north of 20th Avenue in Queens and Parsons Boulevard and in the Bronx. The current Q20A and B provide daily local service along that same corridor between Jamaica and 15th Avenue and College Point Boulevard and College Point, and they, of course, make all local stops. Currently, the Q20A and B do not operate overnight, during which time the Q44 makes all local stops. The Bronx portion of the route is only served by the Q44 Limited, but it makes all local stops along the service road. The Q44 Select Bus will provide service at all times between Archer Avenue and Jamaica and downtown Jamaica, Flushing, and up to the Bronx Zoo, maintaining its current routing. The Q44 Select Bus will not make the local stops that it currently does in Queens and in the Bronx. As part of the implementation of this service, we're going to expand service on the Q20 to provide the overnight service to those local stops in Queens. As part of this also, New York City DOT is looking to introduce bus lanes in downtown Flushing and Jamaica neighborhoods to help improve bus travel times and reliability through the most congested portions of this route. 3 stations on Main Street will have bus bulbs and will extend the existing sidewalk into the parking lane to meet the offset bus lane. The Q44, like our other routes, will also feature off-board fare collection, specially branded buses, and traffic signal priority. The budget impact to New York City Transit is approximately $3.3 million annually and has been included in our operating budget. This concludes the service changes on our agenda.
Mr. Greenberg.
Yes, excuse me, on the Q44, I just want to congratulate the staff for working hard with the local community, because I know there was, and City DOT, I know there was issues about the dedicated bus lanes, and they came to an agreement. This is an important bus line for Queens, and it's good that this is being done, because north-south travel, there is no alternative. You take a bus or you drive, which is why a lot of people are in their cars in Queens doing this kind of trip. Question I have, it said, it gave a percentage, how much speeds will be increased by 20%, I think it says. I just wonder, I'd like to see the current running time for the Q44 and, well, the Q44 Limited as compared with the Q44 SBS. That would be good to see how much time. And if we could get that, if it's a good number, I hope it is, it would be good to get that message out to people, because it has a reputation. You don't want to take it because it goes through Jamaica, and any bus that goes through Main Street or even around Jamaica has that reputation. You just want to avoid it. You don't even want to drive, but that's another issue. And it would be good if we could get that out, because people don't take a lot of people who can choose not to take the bus don't, because of maybe some more of the reputation than the actual speed, but it would be good to show people that. Thank you.
Capelli, and then Mr. Albert.
Yes. First of all, again, thank you for the additions to service, some of which were required by our service enhancement packages of the past, including the Bronx 5 and the SBS, which is a terrific initiative of both the MTA and Commissioner Trautenberg and DOT. Some of the best things we've been doing over the past couple of years for increasing transportation for those areas that are left out of the rest of our system. So thank you for that. I would just hope that as the months go on, we revisit the issue of the BRT in Staten Island, which is a necessary project as convinced to me by staff over the past couple of years. I remember sitting in a room having a number of the people here convincing me that this was the way to go and this is what we needed to do, and then to find it left out of the capital plan was terribly disheartening. Hopefully common sense will affect the Albany budget process, and the capital plan will get funded to the extent that is necessary, and that issue can be addressed. But we continue to need the staff as well as the board members in the city to push for this initiative. That corridor is going to be a disaster. The Staten Island Yankees opened the other day. Parking was a nightmare. As the wheel opens and the retail establishments open, people are going to be choking on traffic there with no place to go. And this is something that is absolutely necessary. So please keep it on your radar screens. Thank you.
I think the Q44 SBS is going to be a terrific route. I just have a couple of questions about some of the eliminated stops. It appears that there's quite a bit of distance between those stops and an existing bus stop, and I'm wondering what boarding was like at those eliminated stops. Some of these are 1,400, 1,500, and in one case is over 2,000 feet away.
Right. We wanted to make sure we had full disclosure on that because in times there are controversies with those. The usages at those stops are relatively light, primarily because this is along, if you're familiar with it, the Cross Bronx Expressway is in a cut. This is the service road.
Right.
At these stop locations, there's no way to cross the highway, so they really only serve customers in one direction. You have to be walking back the other way, and the land uses are more concentrated around the stops we're retaining, which are the major cross streets, and we have talked to the communities up there, and in fact, I believe the community board asked us to consider reducing the number of stops along there, so we have been working with the community at that. As we move forward, we will continue to monitor that and see how it plays out, but
I mean, it's not even
comfortable with that.
And
the ones in, just to make it clear, the ones in Queens, there is an existing local service, and we're expanding that overnight to cover those stops.
Yes.
I just wanted to.
Oh, Commissioner Trotman.
I too want to thank Peter and the team. It has been a great partnership on this. Now we're calling the Bronx, Flushing, Jamaica route. We're very excited about it. And just to reassure everyone here, we're continuing to fine-tune exactly how the engineering is going to work, the traffic flow. When we put these kind of routes together, we don't just put them up and then walk away. We continue. We know particularly in downtown Flushing, traffic is a huge challenge, and we're going to continue to work to make sure this service works really, really well. And just to get into the numbers, I think it's only something like 15% of the people commuting in downtown Flushing are commuting by car. So the vast majority of people are using bus, they're using transit, they're walking. So this is going to be a great service for them. And Alan, we're going to miss you, and don't worry, we have Staten Island. We always have them in our hearts and minds, and are going to continue to see what we can do. We are well aware of the traffic that's coming on the North Shore and trying to see what solutions we can come up with.
Merdler.
Peter, to what extent, if any, is there coordination between the bus service that gets to the ferry terminal in Staten Island and the ferries that come across? Those ferries are just marvelous. It's a superb operation. My question is there coordination there between when the ferries arrive and the buses get there?
Well, first of all, in the big picture, we coordinate our schedules around the ferries, and as I believe we informed the board a few months ago, we've expanded the service in the overnight periods that the city is expanding the ferry service so that there's both buses and Staten Island Railways scheduled to meet all the ferry trips. In terms of actual, I can get back to you with specifics. We do communicate if we have a problem coming into the ferry, but I'm not as familiar with how that works. In the outbound direction with the ferries, we do have holding lights at the bus terminal, and so if the ferry is running a little bit late, we have the ability to communicate that to hold the buses.
Yeah, the dispatchers will hold buses as they know ferries are coming into the terminal, so into the dock. So, so we stay very sensitive, even though it's coordinated from a schedule perspective. We do watch it operationally all throughout the day.
I just want, before we move on from service changes, I also want to mention select bus service will be implemented on the M86 on Sunday, June 28th. And the M86 serves 86th Street in Manhattan, carries approximately 25,000 daily riders, making it the second busiest crosstown bus route in Manhattan. Currently, the M86 connects the dense neighborhoods of the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, and consequently has the most passengers per mile of any New York City transit bus route. In recent years, it's experienced significant delays, a lack of reliability, and ridership has been decreasing. SBS on the M86 will include off-board fare collection, short bus lane segments, eastbound at the approach to the Central Park Transverse Road, and in both directions at Fifth Avenue, and wayfinding signs at bus stops with real-time information as to where the next bus is. After the route is implemented, DOT will build bus bulbs at 3rd Avenue and Lexington Avenue bus stops. And based on our past experiences, we expect that these changes will lead to about a 10% reduction in travel time, and we expect that this will improve the reliability and increase ridership on the routes. So that's some exciting news for the end of the month.
Special reports, you've done that?
Sure. Moving on to special reports, Section 8 of this month's agenda includes our regular status report on the MetroCard program.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll ask Dr. Haradnachenu to refer us to the agenda.
Okay, let me start by reporting on the number 7 line extension. The construction activities and system testing required to support revenue service have been progressing well and are expected to be completed by the end of the month, June 30th. There are a number of challenges remaining, primarily in the commissioning area and activities. And one of them is the open, for the moment, critical code observation log items that we are working on them. In addition to that, we have to deal with one particular elevator, a hydraulic elevator from the street to the upper mezzanine that we are progressing into testing. We had challenges there, and they're primarily driven by the fact that the contractor, in effect, for all practical purposes, did not perform, and all of the work is done by, actually was picked up by the main contractor, that is Skanska. In addition to that, starting tomorrow, we have 3 more fans at Site J that will be undergoing a 100-hour endurance test, and we expect that to be completed by June 30th. Just wanted to mention also the fact that the operators training started on May 23rd as scheduled, and it will be completed by June 26th. The integrated testing for the fire alarm is essentially complete. All assets and facilities are monitored centrally from remote locations. So that part is proceeding well. Nevertheless, there are challenges still remaining that we need to make sure that all the commissioning is done on an appropriate basis. I'm going to actually move to the 2nd Avenue subway, and this particular project is at this point about 83% completed, and we have about 18 months to go. Just to mention a couple of items, the 22,000 linear feet of rail have been all delivered. They are on site at this point, underground, I mean. And 40% of that has been installed, and that actually is proceeding well. Just 2 specific things is 96th Street Station is 70% complete, and we are looking forward to complete the work, the utility work on the ground at the surface by the end of the year. And again, the 63rd Street Lexington Avenue station upgrade is about 90% complete as well. So we're looking forward for that to continue. In terms of other activities that we had a press tour at the end of last month to, in effect, present or showcase construction progress. More than 50 media outlets, both domestic and foreign, participated. We have installed new fence wrapping, and we actually have something that people found it extremely exciting, the 2nd Avenue subway train simulator. And in addition to that, we conducted a presentation and tour of the 2nd Avenue subway to the Congressional Oversight Committee, Subcommittee on Transportation and Public Assets. With that, I would like to show you a short just presentation on our simulator. Just the fence wrapping too, yes. This is the newly installed fence wrapping, actually telling people that this is Q line at the beginning, and where is it going, and it's going all the way to Coney Island. And this is the video of the simulator, train simulator. Lots of children.
This is 96th Street. The next stop is 86th Street. This is a Brooklyn-bound Q local train.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Since we put this in, double the number of people coming weekly into They also get to rank themselves. There is a kind of almost like a game that whoever does not exceed the speed limit, does not make abrupt stops and so forth, they get points. So that's how they, so they can rank themselves with initials. So it's kind of very popular. That concludes my presentation for 2nd Avenue.
Thank you. Is there any further business before the committee? If there is none, a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.